So here is the topic that we're going to be talking about for the next 20-25 minutes or so. Again, if you have a text near you, that would be great. If you just want to follow along with what I'm saying, that'd be okay too. But since Tisha B'Av is really about the destruction of the temples, it covers other tragedies. But the impetus for Tisha B'Av specifically is really the destruction of the first Beit HaMikdash in 586 BCE by the Babylonians, and the second one in the year 70 CE by the Romans. And the Torah only has one model of religion, and that's sacrifice-based. If you were to look in the Chumash itself, early on when women were finally allowed to become rabbis, people were saying women aren't allowed by the Torah to become rabbis, and that is 100% correct. They're not, and men aren't either. No rabbis in the Torah. I mean, we call Moses a rabbi, but he wasn't called a rabbi at the time. There are no rabbis in the Torah. There are no synagogues in the Torah. Everything we think of as rabbinic Judaism, for the most part, is much later. The Torah only has a system of Kohanim and Levi'im. It has a system of sacrifice. There's actually a debate in the Middle Ages whether you have an obligation by the Torah to pray. And the answer of the debate was, one said, they actually both said you should. One said you have to once a year, which many people are now doing successfully. But the other one actually said, no, it's nice to do, but there's actually no obligation. The Torah only understands sacrifice as the way to connect to God, for expiation of sin, for the bringing of thanksgiving offerings, and for praise. That's it. You've got animal sacrifice, you've got grain, you've got wine, but it's, for the most part, animal sacrifice. And by the time you get to Deuteronomy, it is in one specific place, which becomes identified with the Beit HaMikdash in Jerusalem. So that is it. There is only one way to connect to God according to the Torah. And that place then is destroyed, and it's destroyed twice. So the question is, what do you do? So what we've had since 70 CE is rabbinic Judaism. Right? Everything that we've been doing essentially is rabbinic Judaism. The rabbis moved religion into the synagogue, into the home, really into the kitchen. The idea that the home would be the equivalent of of sacrifice. Just about everything that we do in Judaism today was really put in place by the rabbis after the destruction of the temple. So here's the dilemma, and this is where it's unsolvable, and this is a fight in Israel that is simmering under the surface in a very deep way. And because there are so many struggles in Israel above the surface, or that are very obvious, we sort of miss this one. But this is an existential issue over what Judaism actually is. So I'm going to lay out the dilemma, and I was taught that a dilemma are two opposing ideas, both of which are true. So the first response of the return to the land of Israel and Jewish sovereignty is, we are rabbinic Jews, and we are going to implement the best version of rabbinic Judaism. So the chief rabbinate deals with issues of keeping kosher, it deals with synagogues, it deals with marriage, divorce. I'm not advocating it for the system. I'm saying that what is currently in place is what they believe to be the best version of rabbinic Judaism, and that's what legitimate Judaism is. But there's an undercurrent which is growing, which says that the purpose of rabbinic Judaism was as a placeholder until we could go back to the land of Israel and rebuild the temple and reinstitute the priesthood. That's what the Torah says. Right? They're not getting it from nowhere. So the dilemma, and it is unsolvable, because they're both right. I happen to have a preference. It's in my title. Though I am a Kohen too. But I'm also a vegetarian. So I got a lot of really mixed feelings on this one. I'm not sure sacrificing a carrot carries the same drama. Behold the celery. But this is the struggle, and there are people who say we need to rebuild the temple because now we have gone back to the land and we can fulfill the mitzvah of the Torah. Or there are those who say that the sacrificial system was just to get us started as a people, but then rabbinic Judaism was the natural evolution, and we need to keep going forward and not going backward. And I imagine that people have a lot of mixed feelings about this, but there are people in Israel who are actually building the utensils for a future Beit HaMikdash. If you've been to, in the old city, there is a place that some people think is a museum, that they're recreating the utensils from the Beit HaMikdash as an educational tool. And you can see the way it used to be. However, if you go in their gift shop and you look at the pictures on the wall, it talks about what they envision the future to be, and it is the Beit HaMikdash rebuilt. Now, what is the one thing that might cause a bit of a kerfuffle? Where would the Beit HaMikdash have to go? On the Temple Mount. Do you think anyone might object? I could think about a 1.5 billion people who might take issue, right? Because in order to build the Beit HaMikdash, you have to dismantle the Dome of the Rock. We have a word for that. Armageddon. Armageddon. But there are people who say that would be a good thing, right? Let's just have it out. Let's have the war of the end of days. We are living in messianic times, and the Torah wants us to do it, so we should do it. That's, again, the dilemma, but that's undergirding some of the people who want to go to the Temple Mount to pray. But why shouldn't Jews be allowed to pray on the Temple Mount? It's also a dilemma. Politically, it's an issue. But why shouldn't? So these are all the issues, and I'm just sort of setting, that's a very long introduction to a very short look at the text, but I want to lay out what the dilemmas are of what would be the implications of rebuilding the actual Beit HaMikdash on the Temple Mount. The other issue, and I actually believe the one with the Muslim world is easier to solve than the internal issue, which Jewish group gets to run it? That's going to be smoothly. We wouldn't even be able to agree who ran the gift shop for the Beit HaMikdash. That's why I'm actually glad that Indiana Jones hid away the Ten Commandments and the Ark of the Covenant. By the way, can I ruin the movie for you? Would anyone mind if I ruined Raiders of the Lost Ark for them? I happen to love the movie. I saw it when it came out. But I'm going to ruin it for you now. Had Indiana Jones done nothing, had he stayed home and watched TV, it would have been the exact same outcome. They would have opened the lid and they would have gotten eaten by the ghosts. You're welcome. Right. But can you imagine the fighting over the real Ten Commandments? Maybe each movement gets like one tablet. Or who runs it or who implicates it. I think it would be devastating to us as a people. Who's going to actually run it? Is it going to be the group who made the utensils? Is it going to be the chief rabbinate? Is it going to be the highest donor? Can you imagine how many donor plaques there would be in the Beit HaMikdash? They would need to build extra walls just to cover that. But in all seriousness, this is potentially a devastating issue. And I want to look at a few of these sources. We have about 15 minutes before we begin Mariv. If you have a source sheet on page 1, this is from this first is from the Yalkut Shimoni on the Torah. It says, Rabbi Acha, in the name of Rabbi Acha bar Papa, said, when the temple existed, we would sacrifice all the sacrifices of the Torah. Now, what is the use of them? The Holy One, blessed be He, said, since you are studying them, I will raise you up as if you were sacrificing them. Rabbi Asi says, for what reason do we begin instructing children in Torah Kohanim, which is the book of Leviticus? They should begin with Breshit, but the Holy Blessed One said, since children are pure and sacrificial offerings are pure, so should the pure ones engage in study about the pure. And this is a tradition throughout the traditional world that children start with the book of Leviticus when they start studying Torah. But this is where we get the idea of recounting the sacrifices counts as much as actually having made the sacrifices. The rabbis were very clearly anti-temple. When the Beit HaMikdash is destroyed in the year 70 by the Romans, the rabbis really could have gone to them and said, we'd like to continue some kind of korbanot, some kinds of sacrifices, something much more modest. They developed a reasonably good relationship with one of the generals who destroyed Jerusalem. And instead of asking for a place to sacrifice, they asked for a place to study. That becomes Modin, outside of Jerusalem. They were very concerned about maintaining the system of the Kohanim. How did you become a Kohen? Not a trick question. How did you become a Kohen? You got born one. If your father was a Kohen, you were a Kohen as long as you were a dude. And if you were a dudette, you were a bat Kohen, but you didn't offer sacrifices, but you got to eat them until you got married. Right. So, father Kohen, great guy. Son Kohen's a schnook. Son still a Kohen? Absolutely. Right. It was a system that rewarded the lucky DNA club. Had nothing to do with character, had nothing to do with achievement. It was simply a matter of this is how you were born. The other issue is that all priesthoods keep knowledge to themselves. Priesthoods don't like it when you study primary text, because you can then say things back to them and correct them. So the rabbis revolutionized the idea that being a rabbi or being able to participate in the service was based on character and ability and not based on the lucky DNA club. So that is a radical shift, and I want to flag that they could have probably rebuilt something to continue the tradition, but they didn't want to give the power back to the Kohanim. And we do know for about 100 years after the Second Temple was destroyed, Kohanim were still going door to door and offering to sacrifice something for a small but meaningful donation. Right? It wasn't like the temple's destroyed and they're like, oh, well, we give up. Hey, rabbis, it's you. That's not what happened. We know that they tried to continue sacrifice for a while. And the rabbis, in fact, were so worried about that, they eliminated the one sacrifice you actually could do at home that you didn't need the temple for. Which is the one home-based sacrifice? It's in only a few months. It's only like 7 months from now. The Passover lamb. And for those of you who say these things are barbaric, if you eat meat, the difference is whether the shochet wore a fancy hat or not. All right, the difference between a sacrifice and a barbecue is very small. It's really the outfit and the bracha, right? They ate they did in fact eat the animals, but there is this concern that the system would become fascistic and patriarchal and just father to son. So that was one of the issues of why they kept it, the idea of just study would replace sacrifice. If you look in the middle of where it says Sidur Ashkenaz, this is the law of the sin offering, this is the law of the guilt offering, to teach us that when one studies the law of the sin offering, it is considered as though they had actually brought it on the altar. And when one studies the law of the guilt offering, it is as though they actually brought it on the altar. Where do we primarily nowadays study the sacrifices? What is the number one source for studying the sacrifices? Musaf. Musaf on Shabbat and holidays. It's really all about the sacrifices. It happens to have very nice tunes, so you don't always connect it. One of these days I'm going to make you sing it in English. And on the Sabbath day, they took 2 little lambs and slit their throats and put, and barbecued them and ate them. Right? It has a very cheerful melody, like a James Taylor song. And if you ever listen to his lyrics, they're just as cheerful as Musaf. Musaf becomes not the remembrance of Musaf so we can do it again in the future. Musaf is so we never have to do it again in the future. Right? The essence of rabbinic Judaism is that we don't bring back the temple. But again, let's go back to the original question, though, is rabbinic Judaism what should be practiced in the land of Israel now? And we're not going to solve it here. But that's the struggle that is going on internally. And this is a struggle that actually even is found in the book of prophets. If you look with Ezekiel, page 1 and page 2, Ezekiel is living in the exile after the destruction of the first temple. He's living in Babylon, and he has a vision of a rebuilt temple. God says, this is the temple that you are going to build. This is the temple of the future. And Ezekiel is all in on rebuilding it. And you can read through that, but what I want to look at is Isaiah on page 3, also in exile, who says, "What need have I of all your sacrifices, says the Lord? I am sated with burnt offerings of rams and suet of fatlings and blood of bulls. and I have no delight in lambs and he-goats, that you come to appear before me. Who asked that of you? Trample my courts no more. Bringing oblations is futile. Incense is offensive to me. New moon and Sabbath, proclaiming of solemnities, assemblies with iniquity cannot abide. Your new moons and fixed seasons fill me with loathing. And what God wants instead is, wash yourselves clean, put your evil doings away from my sight, cease to do evil, learn to do good, devote yourselves to justice, aid the wrong, uphold the rights of the orphan, defend the cause of the widow. Ezekiel says, absolutely, we need to rebuild it. Isaiah says, absolutely, we don't, we need to do justice. Now, Ezekiel and Isaiah are in the big three of prophets, along with Jeremiah. Right? It's not that one is on a higher degree or the other. What to me is extraordinary is that the Tanakh actually sustains both these ideas. Right? They're both considered legitimate approaches. But that's the dilemma that's undergirding Judaism now in Israel. There's actually even a debate whether Judaism practiced outside of Israel counts, or it just counts as practice for when we are in Israel. Right, this is a debate going back to the Middle Ages. Is what we're doing, does it all count? Or is this just really staying in practice? Obviously, one was written by someone living in Israel, one was written by someone outside of Israel. This is a dilemma that continues, and this became a much bigger issue in 1967 when the Jews got control of Jerusalem and the Temple Mount area and the Kotel area for the first time since the year 70. And even then it was under Roman occupation. And the question was, what do we do about it today? And the decision was ultimately to give control of the Temple Mount itself to the Jordanians, to the Waqf, and ultimately under non-Jewish control, which it is legally to this day. I can't think of another capital city that has its most essential place under control of another country. It would be like Canada controlling Ford Field. I mean, I exaggerate a little. But technically, the Temple Mount is not under the control of the Israeli government, and there are people who are very angry about that. So on page 12 of this packet, we have an excerpt from Rav Goren, who you may remember from 67. He blew the shofar. He made a very passionate speech. He was really angry about this decision, and angry about it till the day that he died. And he says, this shameful situation where under Israeli rule a Jew does not have the right to pray on the mountain of God cannot be tolerated under any circumstances. But then you have Chaim Ovadia, who asked the question, do you really want the sacrifices again? Do you really want to go back to the old days? Some people do, some people don't. And again, it's not solvable. But what I do want to think about is that when we look at the Temple Mount and all the arguing that's going over that, the Muslim world has something to do with it, but actually not as much as you think. What it really has to do is the future of Judaism the past? Is the future of Judaism the current present? Or is the future of Judaism something completely different that might be evolving as we speak? And may we all live long enough to see what it is. So we'll hold here because it is 9:45.